Have you thought about how to grow your business in 2021? And is podcasting part of that plan? If you have questions, stay right there because the Queens are going to take a deep dive on this topic with their special guest right now.
Welcome to Coffee with the Queens. You are in the right place if you have coffee and a tiara. Okay, as long as you have questions, you are in the right place. Join forces where Queens of Kingdoms come together to share successful stories and wisdom that made our digital kingdoms abundant. Take it away, Queen Tammy.
Welcome. Lords and ladies. Everyone doing? Have their coffee and tiara? Yes. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about podcasting. I don't know about you, but it feels like everyone has a podcast these days. And we want to explore that. Is that really a way to grow our business in 2021? What's all involved? So we have some special guests around that. I'd love to throw it out to you. I know, I listen to one particular podcast around my Amazon business, which, I get really good, valuable information. What is your favorite podcast, and have you ever thought of starting one? Kathy, I know you had talked about it before.
Right. It's interesting. Till about 6 months ago, I really wasn't, I'll call it into podcasts, but I am now totally into podcasts. And so I was doing some research and I found that I'm not the only person that's into podcasts. So I think the data shows there are 1,500,000 podcasts. That's an amazing number. Wow. 30% of all of the US listens to a podcast. But I think the scary part, if I was thinking about starting a podcast, is that people only watch 7. My brain just went blank. What the number says is that although we have tons of podcasts, that the average person listens to only 7. I know that's why my brain went. I said it couldn't be just 7. It's got to be like 700. But then I said, no, that's not the right number. It is 7.
Probably 7.
It's only 7. That is the average number of podcasts that people listen to. Yeah. So I guess my question to all of us is, sounds great, and I know it's kind of like the in thing to do, and I know that I am one of those people who listen to podcasts. But the question is, if there's only 7 podcasts per week, how do you actually decide this is the business you want to be in? And I'm hoping that's what we're going to learn this today. So,
right. 7. I would listen to 7. So, Hela, how about you?
Yeah.
I'd like to listen to Susie Orman. She has, it's all about money and how to save your money. And so I really enjoy listening to her. So that's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to.
Oh, thank you, Hela, for actually piping in today, because she has no power in San Diego. Right. So hopefully we're going to keep you through the whole show and see what happens.
And I think I forgot to answer the question of what's my favorite podcast. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sort of with you. I am definitely a financial channel person. I am a Susie Orman person. I love Grant Cardone. I love Roland Frazier. He has a podcast called The Business Lunch. So if you looked at my list of podcasts, it's like a financial channel. So,
yeah,
makes sense.
It's kind of like, it's interesting you said it's like a financial channel. To me, podcasting is kind of what TV used to be. Where everybody would watch maybe 7 shows, and that was the 7 that they would watch for the week. And podcasting is kind of the same thing. Now, I have been threatening to actually start a podcast for over a year. I've actually got the artwork for it. I have the guests lined up. I have the categories. I'm super excited, but I have not pulled the trigger yet for various reasons. I'm going to throw some of the stuff out to our guests today as well. My favorite podcasts, I really do like a variety of them, but I think one of my favorites is, I think it's Don Miller, Story Brand, because the branding and the storytelling combination just always is exciting and interesting to me. So, but if you have the same questions that I do out there and you're thinking, I do want to do it, but what about this and what about that? Because it can be kind of a scary new venture, and how much do you have to invest in your time and your money? And hopefully we're going to find that out today, because our 2 people that are our guests today are little powerhouses in this field. So we're going to get your questions answered today. We have the dynamic duo of Lisa Berry and Tomás Garza. Lisa is an international show host, a podcast producer, and trainer creating global conscious conversations. Lisa herself is an international best-selling published author with a background in holistic nutrition and life coaching. And Tomás is the host of the podcast Decide to Transform. An author, he's together with Lisa Berry, is a podcast and media producer and trainer. He enjoys helping others give voice to their message in both spoken and written form. So please welcome Lisa Berry and Tomás Garza. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here. We love this.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about you guys. How did you guys meet?
Through podcasting.
There you go. Let's start.
Yeah.
You know what? Tomás was wanting to have a podcast. He had written his first book, his solo book. He's got it out there and thought, okay, what's next? And so through channels, just a connection that Tomás had heard, he had connected with me. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to help you. Let's get you started.
And you've been doing that ever since.
That's
With
it.
more people.
It was a year ago, and yeah, it's been a fun ride since then. You bet.
That is so cool. I have to ask, the first question that comes to mind is, when you were listening to Kathy spout off some statistics here, a lot of people would think, and this is probably one of the reasons people don't pull the trigger. Like I said, I've been threatening to start my own podcast for a year.
Yeah.
The thought is that it's too late, that the ships have already sailed, that there are hundreds of thousands, if not, over 1 million podcasts that are available. Why dive into a pool that is already so full?
Can I get this one, Tomás? Or are you good? Okay.
I've got some thoughts on this. Yeah.
Both of you. Let's hear both.
For me, when I first heard that, it's so, I love that number about 7, because I know for myself, I may listen to 7 for a period, but then my interests switch. So I'll go from maybe financial, but more than likely to health, and then to spirituality. And then, so I'll kind of pop around. And as I advance, I need to hear somebody else to their message, their voice, how they say it in a different way. So I don't think we can ever run out. I mean, I know if you look at the weight loss world or whatever world happened, there's millions of millions, and we love choices. And so I think that's where it's this, you dive in and threaten all you want, just go.
Yeah, and another thing is, it's a different way for people to get their message out there. And Lisa and I have worked with a number of authors, with entrepreneurs, anybody that has a lot of content and is looking for a new audience. It's a great way to get more exposure. It's a great way to communicate your message. And it's just because there are a number of podcasts, a number of them are specifically niche podcasts, and people are drawn to a specific thing. And it's a different way to get your message out there and gain a following.
You mentioned niche too. Sorry, guys. This is just blowing my mind a little bit. The niches, some of the niches are so tiny.
They are.
There are golf podcasts. I think it's boring enough on TV. I'm not a golf fan. I'm sorry for anybody this, but how in the world can you find an interest? But there are, there are podcasts for those that teach people how to ride horses. There's I can find a podcast for just about anything. It's amazing.
What I love about niches, and that why I actually myself, I like that one-on-one almost. So for me, I'm like, great, if I can put out a podcast and I only have 500, and that's a teeny tiny number, 500 listeners. Amazing. Now I can have these closer, more intimate relationships with my clients who I can do more one-on-one. And if we're talking about monetizing it, then that's more of your higher paying ticket client. Whereas if you're looking, and I don't mean to be insulting or anything, but if you call it the dollar store theory, you have millions and millions of listeners that might, donate on Patreon for $1 or something. So there's a different way of looking at it and what relationship you want with your listeners.
You mentioned the word Patreon. So for those listeners that, would like to know what that is, could you explain what Patreon is?
Okay, Patreon's one of the platforms that people, it's almost like not a GoFundMe. It's a place where artists and entrepreneurs can put up their work or their cause. You don't have to be in business to go on Patreon. It could be you have a sick child. You could somewhere you'd like to raise funds and support, and you're offering something of value in return. And so it's a nice, pleasant way to showcase what your offer or your asking is, and allow others to be a part of your mission.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Since we touched on that, what are the different ways that, I know there are different ways, and I believe you should structure your show in the beginning for monetization. There's probably a few different ways that you can share that is possible. Can you share some of those ways with us? Because I know some of the watchers and listeners today are probably thinking, I'll do this if I'm going to get a good ROI.
Right. Yeah. This is we could talk on this subject for a long time, like you said. Obviously, there's so many different ways that you can monetize. One of the ways is, like Lisa was talking about, is to crowdfund and get donations. People often charge guests, especially if they have a lot of exposure. That's something that is done, and people have commercials on podcasts. It's a place to get sponsorship. It is a place to mention products. There are mentions, commercials, sponsors, just to name a few.
And affiliates as well, right? So if you have a guest on and they have a program, you can be an affiliate of that program that might be an evergreen, source of revenue. So that's possible too, right? How do people react in general when you charge to be a guest on your show? Does that really work?
Well, I'll grab this one. So first of all, it's fun actually finding which way each and every host is comfortable. Because if you are not comfortable and aligned and feel like you have value in that area, if you don't feel like you have the value, there are lots of hosts who absolutely would die if they had to charge. Whereas I am a host who only charges because that was my way of doing it. But what I make sure is I offer is I do more of a coaching. It's not just, it's conscious conversations. And so it's not just an interview piece. Also, you have to recognize that when, let's just say one of you said to me, "Oh, I'd love to be on your show," and I say, "Hey, it's $300." And you're like, "What?" And I say, "Yes, you know what's going to happen at the end of that thing? I'm going to make sure that I've asked such important questions that when you answer, you can use them as sound bites later for your own marketing pieces." What I love knowing is that every interview you ever do, every show anybody ever does, that's one moment in time. You will repurpose that at least 7 to 8 other times. Like there's so many different ways of reusing it. So the value doesn't just end. If somebody said, "I did your show and I haven't heard anything." And I think, my gosh, you just did it last week. Like actually Tomás and I, I had a call with a lady a year prior and it didn't turn out. She did not come onto the show, but she was one who recommended Tomás. And so Tomás ended up, becoming on the show, but then a client and then a business partner and dear friend. So we can never just look at one moment in time. Like there's it's like octopus.
And I love that idea of repurposing it too. Now, what are your thoughts on offering like show notes or taking the script or going to Rev or something like that and getting the transcript and making it available? Do you recommend that? Is that a way that you could maybe charge a couple of dollars for that, or do you just offer that? Is it too much work?
You could do a number of things with that, and audio clips, short sound recordings can be offered as a free giveaway, for example, if you want to attract people to a higher ticket program, for example, or to sign up to an email list, something like that. There are video clips if you have a video podcast, and mine is audio only, so there's the possibility of audio clips as well. So there's all kinds of different things.
So I have a question for you. Can anybody get on any of the platforms where you can put a podcast, or are there some types of platforms that's like invitation only, or you have to pay? So how do you distribute this? What's the secret to getting broad distribution once you make this podcast?
All right. The secret to getting broad distribution is your own effort. Honestly, there are so many, there are so many different podcast platforms, and they range from free to various tiers of paid. And my show, for example, is on a channel called Podbean that hosts a number of different shows. And, I'm paying a certain amount every month. It's not very much, and some channels cost more than others. There are free, but anybody, like you said, can put up a podcast, and that's why there are 1.5 million, or whatever that's a large number, and people can put it up. How it gets out there is what you do with that and what your guests do, because there's all kinds of opportunity for cross promotion. And Lisa and I, for example, can cross promote this show, and there are 4 of you promoting, and sometimes guests have a large mailing list of their own.
So I also heard that there is a way that if we looked at traditional radio today, that podcasts today are like becoming a new way to create a radio show. Do you have any experience in that or thoughts about that? Somebody said that I could take my podcast, whatever this, and then all of a sudden I'm on iHeartRadio on my television set. Can you talk about that? Or do you have any experience in that, or where you see this impacts radio shows? And is it a way to get a radio show?
Well, I'll share this one with you. So I actually am still in. I don't have my own podcast, Tomás, and I do guests. I actually have an internet radio show, and I've had multiple. Right now I have 3 of them, but my mainstay, Light on Living, has been on for 5 years on internet radio. Now, if you go back to your other, you have satellite radio too, and then you have your radio, like when you go to your car and kind of tune into the radio, and they all kind of, for me, it's all blending in the way of airwaves, sound waves. We all can tune in. It's more who is backing that station, that platform. And so with my radio station, I pay more money to be on my internet radio because remember Tomás said it's through your own efforts. When you do a podcast, you can do that if you're solo. I chose to go with a very well-known big name in my community, so that I knew I was going to get like millions and millions of listeners to at least their website, their station. And so there, it's about, I love that you mentioned that, Tomás, about inviting your guests. So I had the option of inviting guests of higher caliber, let's say, who has a larger list, so that I could hope for that sharing. Or I could say, hey, I really want to do this as my living right now, and I don't want to wait for income, so I can continue doing that. So I decided to charge. And so then what my promise is now, okay, well, how do I promise that I can get listeners? How do I promise I get viewers and get those views up? Well, that's when I decided to be with a network or a station that has a larger audience. And so it does take time too. So once somebody picks you up, you have no control. You might be picked up by 20 other little mini stations that you've never heard of, which might provide you with an extra couple thousand downloads.
So when you do that, if you're part of a group, I'll call it, how do you share? Do you share the monetization? Is it like, do you pay? And are you like a little corporation that everybody's working together? Or are you like a solo entrepreneur? So
they're different on, I pay if a fee on my radio doesn't that I'm, and then I can kind of do whatever I want after that. But I kind of just chose that route there. But in Tomás's case, Tomás, you can share how you work with that.
Yes. Yeah, I actually had an internet radio show at one time. I've done both an internet radio show, a live show, and a podcast. Now I have a traditional podcast, and one of the benefits of that is I can record as many shows as I would like at any one time, release them whenever I want, and there's no time constraint. I don't have an hour period of time like a conventional or internet radio show. And that has been a tremendous advantage for me. And we can invite, if you choose to do interviews, you can invite whomever you please and record at your own convenience, which is great if someone has a busy life and they're wondering, hey, can I fit this in to my schedule? Well, the answer is yes, you can.
Yes.
So if I'm listening to our show, what's the difference between the term podcast and the term internet radio show? What's that difference in terms of planning, thinking, monetizing?
Mm-hmm.
Couple things. You can decide to have a commercial on your own podcast. So like Tomás could have commercials if he wanted to, or a sponsor or anything like that. With the radio, by having like an internet radio show, the way I have it is that I have probably 30 other shows happening. So we're all drawing attention. We're all putting that invitation out to listen to the show. We have that's where that kind of, when you said that community is helping you support, but you also get that on a podcast as well. It's just that there's a different, so when I'm selling my commercial time, my airtime, or I'm selling sponsorship right now, because my views, like Tomás, you'll be up there soon. He's going to have just as many views as the whole radio network anyways, but so we all climb at different rates and in different ways. There's just so many, it's like winning the lottery. There's so many combinations to do it. But it's also, I want to just bring that back to what you are comfortable with. And it is about knowing, I love that you guys are asking these questions, because it's about knowing, okay, wait, where do I go? What do I do?
It's very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming. You know, I thought like saying that I thought I was moving forward with it. And I got on the phone with a friend that no longer does, but he has he still has a successful podcast and it's growing even more. But when I got him on the phone, he goes, oh, well, I coached people for a while and I have a program on how to launch a podcast. I'm like, that's great. So I told him my idea and he told me all the holes that were in my ideas, that I was complicating things. I was making him and so I just stopped because there are so many different choices and it can be really overwhelming. And one of the questions was, how long should you plan a podcast to be? Because again, it's like the investment of money. I saw everything from free, as you said, Tomás, all the way up to, hey, give us $10,000 and we'll do everything for you. Right. And I've actually been told that, just give us your content and we'll do everything. So how long should it be? That's something that, time commitment in this case.
Well, for an individual episode or
for like each episode, like I'm going to do a podcast. Some people do them and they're 5 minutes long,
right? And
others it's an hour or more.
Yeah. I record mine. I have a time frame. I don't want to cut off a good conversation. So if I'm with a guest and we're having a great time and I know that the audience is getting tremendous value out of it, I'll go over 1 hour, but I aim to record in an interview between 40 minutes to 1 hour. And a lot of internet radio shows are 1 hour, but you do see, like I said, 5-10 minute podcasts. I could never do that because I could just keep talking and talking. I could talk on my own for a couple of hours.
And I have to say on this one, I really want to bring this back to the host. I would love people to remember so that this is a passion thing that people do. Yes, it's a piece of their business, but you got to love doing it. Otherwise, it will become work and you'll want to quit and you won't enjoy it and you won't talk about it. So for me, like I actually get antsy-pantsy, like at the 40-minute mark, I'm like wriggling around. That's why actually I choose radio because I don't want to be seen like how anxious I'm getting. But more so is this. If you feel you can get something valued out in 5 or 10 minutes, and that's your audience because they are attracted to your happiness in that time frame. But if honestly, there's a couple people that I listen to and I think, what? It's only 40 minutes. I want an hour and a half of them. So I think it's your topic. Like I can tell when I'm interviewing somebody and I have an hour show, but I know at 40 minutes, I'm really struggling or pressing, like I'm not quite feeling the vibe anymore. I wish I could just stop it, but it's live. But then I have to really dig, and you have to be a really good host in that way and know where does my audience want me to go with this still, and where's my client? If you're charging your guest to be on your show, where does my client need me to go? So you just have to know. You're really, if anyone started looking at starting their podcast, is what do you love? Where can you do it so that you're happy almost all the time doing it? And where are your strengths that you would like to improve and grow so that no matter what, you can always serve your audience and your guest, no matter what?
The other thing that we've heard, it's kind of like building a brand. And if we listen to all of the shows, the first thing we hear is their music. And I know I'm on the right podcast. Music is, how do you decide, what type of music you want to hear? Is that part of what you think about when you're thinking about building this business? That
it's brand, right?
Your brand's music
is brand.
It is. It is. I love my music, and I got my music off of a source called Audio.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love it. It was a matter of searching through for the feel and the tempo, and I have a spoken intro and an outro that I add to my show.
Is it your voice that's the spoken intro and outro, or did you get someone else? Because sometimes I think it's weird when you tune into like someone's podcast and it's a different voice inviting you into the podcast, right? It seems weird to me, but that's just my.
When Tomás and I have our clients, we have a program. We do walk like people who want to be hosts through it. And one of their most exciting things is when we say, all right, you get to pick your music. And they're like, oh, and it's like this, what outfit am I going to wear for the show? And it's really exciting, I think, because it gets it sets the mood for the host to have a great show. Mine is, I wrote mine because you can imagine, mine sounds like it's very ragtime, piano music, and it's like a circus because you're like, okay, we're getting ready. It's like you're not going to be into some very quiet, calm thing. And I think it really sets the mood. So I love that you asked that. It's like your outfit for your show, like what you want.
Yeah, it's great. It's
and
fun.
people can choose a logo, like you all have chosen a logo right there. And that's a part of it. Artwork is a part of it. There are all kinds of visual and audio components that go into it. And it's a great way to extend a brand. And like Lisa said, we have a program where we walk people through the creation and the production of their own podcast or internet radio show, whichever they choose, and take all those creative processes, because, well, like you said, Sandra D, it's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, so it helps to have somebody to walk you through it, I'm sure. And you mentioned artwork. So can we just touch on that really quick? Because I know that people have an idea of what they want. If they think of it as an album cover, when the reality is it's teeny, teeny, tiny whenever you're doing a search for the podcast. So you have to think a little bit more like a stamp, postage stamp, than an album cover as far as the artwork. Am I right? And should your face be on it?
Oh, I've done both. I've had a banner with my face on it. Now, currently, I had my daughter go on my Canva and design me a thumbnail, because you mentioned they're small. It's like an app on a phone. That's the size that people look at. So I don't have my face on there anymore. It's just something that she designed for me, and I love it.
Okay. Lisa, is your face on your thumbnail?
On my brand it is, but I think because I do very I want to say it's more about the host. If you're looking for a feel, like if you just want an ohm symbol or a money symbol or something that it's around a topic because you want to draw in, then that's probably the best. But if you want to be known as a personality, then you're going to want to use the face. I think it's more of how intimate is that conversation, and is it more about just delivering information, and not that Tomás decided to just deliver information, and also colors. I think colors are probably your best thing. I remember when my colors got off on one point, I was like, ooh, it's just not nailing it, and I don't like looking at it, and it was really like a couple shades off. And so I think you just be really happy with what you like, again, what draws you in.
Yeah. Well, that's important. It's kind of like your website. If the colors are off on your website, like I cringe if something is off on my website and somebody goes, "Oh, what's your website?" I kind of like twitch before I get it straightened out, right? It does have to resonate with you, so that, as you said, if you're not having a good time, you're not enjoying any part of this, you're not going to share it. And that's how you're the number one motivator for getting people to see the show or listen to the show, right?
Sure.
Perfect. That's exactly.
You are. And if you're
we have
having
a couple of questions. Oops, sorry.
Yes, questions.
So Hayla has a question. Oops.
So what equipment do you recommend?
Sorry.
Ask it again, Samantha.
So she was asking what equipment, like if you're setting up a podcast studio, what do you need? I think, is that correct, Sally? I think that's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Tomás?
yeah, I've got a nice microphone, which I recommend. It's a Blue Yeti. People have those. A nice microphone, a USB microphone, is great, and I just plug it into my Mac. I have not bought any additional equipment. I have a pop filter. I got a package that was on Amazon.
This is a pop filter, in case people don't know what a pop filter is.
Yeah, so I've got that. I've got the same setup there: a USB microphone and a pop filter. And I use headsets. I don't have a video podcast, so I can just show up wearing a headset. And I record on Zoom. I use only the audio file, which is an option that people have. That's all I've done. As far as investing and paying for the monthly hosting.
So how do you get from the podcast to the channel or to the internet radio show? What's that process? Is there software? Is it manual? Do you have a team? How do you do that?
Oh, to log on to record. Okay. For podcasting, yeah. So Tomás, pretty much you would log in. We record on Zoom quite often, but I'm sure you could use StreamYard, like just
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, you can record, and sometimes if I do a solo show, sometimes I do a show without a guest. It's just me, and I just use my computer recording my voice memos on a Macintosh. So if you have a PC, I'm sure there's an equivalent of that. I just use that, or I use Zoom and the microphone to record, and it's very, very good sound quality. it's that's really all I do. And for an internet radio show, yeah, Lisa was going to
Well, more so, I wanted to say to people, the number two things that drive me crazy when I hear a show, and I'm just like, oh, it is the connection, because if there's a lot of breaking up or thing, oh, it's so you're like, oh, and the other thing is too is what was I going to say? Sound. Oh, is wind, if somebody's really close to the mic and it's like, it's so, and you almost see like your face hurts kind of when you're doing so. As long as you're comfortable and your listeners aren't straining or squishing their face to try to make sense, it's not painful for them to listen to. And then that's the number one thing. Make sure those are nice and crisp and clear. And I have used everything from back in the day when there was $0, from putting pantyhose on a headband and using that as my own pop filter. It's got really creative.
There you go. That works.
Oh my God, amazing. It takes the S's, so they're not bored. It just softens everything. So yeah, pantyhose over a headband. It's
great. We can make it work no matter what. It's like when I was, I help people in the same way with video and things like that. And years ago, when people started using video, they thought they had to go out and like create a studio like I had. And like, you don't. I mean, literally, you could have gone to Home Depot and got a couple of reflector boards and a light from Home Depot and make it work. I mean, you do what you can at the time. And then when you get into the monetization of it and it starts to pay off, and either clients, customers, or sponsorships or something, then you can upgrade to something different. But you don't have to start complicated. Right?
You don't. The most important thing is to start. It really is. When I started 5 years ago, it's over 5 years now that I started on radio, and it was just like, it's almost like it's funny to listen back and go, oh my gosh, that was. But you have. It's fun to do that journey, and if you never, I think that everybody knows the regrets are the worst. If you think, gosh, I didn't do it, or I should have done it, or it's never too late. I know I have to say that it really is just never too late.
Which you mentioned regrets that, and it posed a question in my mind. What are the biggest mistakes that people make?
Ooh. Well, I think the number one mistake is not starting. If you really want to do it, that's the number one.
All right, that put a fire under me. Thank you.
Second one, screen your guests. Like the blooper reels are hilarious and all, but you really do want to, if you're going to have a guest, know your guest, know that you'll have some surprises come up. And I'm like, oh, and also too, one thing that was really bad and still working on, everybody, is I'd be like, no, I got plenty of time. I started in like 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes because something happened. I'm there and I'm like, oh no, I can't get on, or this happened. So really give yourself that time. Prepare your environment. Prepare yourself. Don't cut it so close, and so you're
great. That's
great. Fun. We have a guest question. I'm going to put it here on the screen. It's a question about using Audacity, which is a software for your audio. Have you used Audacity or any other software that you would recommend?
Okay. I've thought about using Audacity. Never used it to record. I use just my microphone and Zoom when I have a guest, and when it's just me recording, I actually use the Voice Memos app on a Macintosh. So, okay. Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever thought about doing a meditational podcast?
No, as soon as he speaks, it's kind of like, wow, I just melt into relaxation. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I have. And on some of my older shows, I lead guided meditations as well. So the answer to that is yes, most definitely.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Mads, by the way, for the question. As you probably know, each week we give away a gift for engagement on this show. So we will be choosing a person who engages the most here shortly during our live show. So I think any more questions, please get them in there for our guests. And usually we have a quote. Sandra, do you have one? Otherwise, I do have one I can share.
You go, Tammy. You go with the quote.
Oh, see, all these things can happen on a live show, can't they?
I think the quote's going to be that much better because we're waiting for it now.
Exactly. So this is Martin Luther King said this, and it was echoed here a couple of times by both of you in one of your biggest points. So he said, you don't have to see the whole staircase just take the first step. So I think from a motivational standpoint, I think we all, have so many questions and we're afraid to start. But as you both said, just do, and then you get better and grow as you go, don't you?
Yes.
Yes. And you know what the funny is, your heart actually grows with you. I have to say, it's not just about skill. Your heart actually starts to open, because I know it can get there's a little fear inside there. And it's so many guests. Tomás and I think we've had so many, my first time guests ever. And after they go, oh my gosh, and you get this kind of high, and the oxytocin is rushing through their system. And then, so if you're thinking about having your own show and you do have that teeny tiny fear, you know what? Start being a guest. Start being a guest on some others, and go along the circuit, and then get your pointers and tips. And then that will just help you build up your confidence as well.
When you say circuit, is there a way that you would recommend that people find specific podcasts to be on as a guest?
Cool. There are so many. Honestly, put in what you're looking to speak about and start listening. Hey, you know what? I've reached out to people that I probably would thought, no, I'm never going to get on there or have them as a guest. And then I do, and some I never hear back from. So look for what you're interested in your circuit, and just keep rolling down and seeing who's commenting. What about you, Tomás? What do you think?
Yes, the same. And we're blessed to have Google at our disposal and search engines, and we can search podcasts in our area. I've also done the same thing. I've reached out to people, and some never got back to me. But there are a number of podcast hosts out there that are actively looking for guests, always, at all times. So if someone does this, then they're very likely to get a number of interviews.
There are actually, using social media, you can go into Facebook, look under groups. You can go into LinkedIn and look under groups. And there are actually podcast groups in both of those that you can then join. And like anything, like when you're going for any media, and you guys can back me up on this if you agree, Tomás and Lisa, I think with any media, my advice to the folks that are watching is you have to listen to the show before you pitch yourself. And that way, what kind of show it is, because one of the podcast hosts that I've been speaking with said, yeah, I got pitched by this guy that was insistent on being a guest on my show, and he had a podcast with no guests. That was the premise of it. It was just, he had no guests. So this guy kept getting into his space and saying, I want to be a guest. And he's like, have you ever listened to my show? It's not going to work, So I think like anything, any show you want to get on, any media, listen, learn a little bit about the show so that you then can, as Tomás, I'm sure you did, give a nice, introduction to yourself and why you might be good for the show. Right.
Yeah, and it also helps if you end up on the show. It helps to know about it. It helps to know their audience a little bit, and it helps you as a guest to be more confident on the show with some sort of backdrop.
Yeah, I want to wear my tiara today.
Right. So Tammy, I know that we were on a show once where before we got on the show, Tommy sent you like a guideline on what to expect. Do you guys do that? How do you prepare your guests, or how do you find that right mix and make sure that you're meeting their goals, your goals? Is there some format or some
discovery calls? We do discovery calls for sure. Yeah, and just you can set them as short. They do not have to be long, because you can really get the feel right away if you're going to do well with them. It's a quick funny story. I had this one lady. I had a publicist who pitched me, and so they sent me some wonderful authors. And I remember thinking, "Wow, this has got." I don't even need to hear her chat, but I jumped on the phone. She was fabulous. She'd been on Dr. Phil and Oprah and everything, and then she got on the show. And she just didn't talk. And I thought, and then when she did, she kind of sounded mean. And I was like, what's happening? So you also have to adjust for, maybe it's a bad day. I really did. I always look through social media to check on my guests prior. I have a short chat with them. I like to message with my voice back and forth with them, so they hear me. They know that I'm going to be quick and happy and blasting at them. And I like to hear how they're going to respond to that, so I know to tone it down a little bit or not. And so, Tomás, I think you're the same. You get to really know the guest.
Right. Yeah, I use Facebook Messenger, and I send all of the information ahead of time, days ahead of time, so that people aren't left wondering what's going on 5 minutes prior, because it makes people nervous that way. And I don't want to do that, because I want to create the calming space for people to tell their story. So I also send voice messages like Lisa does on Messenger, so they get to hear me and speak with me prior. Very important.
That's a really good point. I was invited on a podcast once and they were using Voxer, and I found that to be a really fun app. If you haven't used Voxer, and it reminds me of the old Nextel phones. So it almost turns your phone into like a little walkie-talkie.
Yes, my sister uses that with her kids.
Yeah, and as you said, Lisa, if you want them to start to hear your voice and the energy in your voice, then it would be a good app,
Yes.
A good app to use.
I was bugging Sohaila this morning. Happy birthday!
Yeah, it's nice to create that personal touch, I think, also with the voice. That's the way I wave back to people. If people connect with me on Facebook and they send the wave, then I send them a voice message. That's my wave.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm gonna steal that. That's a big takeaway for me today. Well, I just had a long meeting the last 2 days, the same organization and different groups in this organization, talking about how after this crazy year that we have had, that personal touch is actually so much more important to us. And the different ways that people think, how can I give that personal touch? And part of it is exactly what we're talking about with the Voxer and leaving voicemails and even text videos instead of just texting the words. But all of this ties into the same reason why it's a great time now to start your podcast, because it does have, as you were saying, Lisa, it has that personal feel. And when you listen, even I listen to my podcast in the car, and I can hear like David Nagel's voice as if he's sitting in the passenger seat, right? And so you feel like you're in this really intimate situation with the host if they do a good job and they're authentic, as you were saying, and they have their own voice and they're speaking from their truth, and they do all the things that you guys tell them to do. Then it'll be great.
I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to share. So one of the things I love to do is I interview anthology or compilation authors. So there's a group. And sometimes you can end up writing in a book and never meeting the other authors, or that you say, oh yes, I know that they're having their own interview, but a lot of times we'll create groups. And so I'll actually get asked, can I be invited into your group? And then I'll do little videos, and then they can comment back and forth. And then I like to refer to another guest, maybe on that other guest show, like if there's that connection, not just random, but it's always nice to cross the road. But that actually really helps with viewership, because then if you're sharing and other people say, oh, wow, yes, then I can see that. And I have a friend who knows this. So you really want to get the referrals rolling, because you feel safe. It's like saying, hey, I have this friend. It's like, it's not just a host or a guest it's like, I have this friend. I know this person. They're sitting in my seat, like what you said. My people are always in the bathroom doing their makeup with me. So
yeah, that's the blessing of having that personal touch, of having a podcast. So I understand you guys do you have a resource for us or something that you would recommend?
Resource as the gift? Is this the gift?
Well, yeah. If you have a gift for us, if you have somewhere, where do we find you? Where do we get more from you?
More of us.
We could keep you on for the rest of the day, but I'm assuming that you have things to do.
Later.
We'd love to hear from anybody who's interested or curious or has questions or anything, because we will hop on a discovery call with you. But if you just email Lisa at podcastprosperity.com. Cool. So podcastprosperity.com. But we do a free gift, Tomás, and you get to hear Tomás's voice then, Sandra Diaz. Tomás, to share what the gift is. And we'd love to share the gift.
Yes. What we're offering is that we decided we each have our own, of course, email addresses and shows, but we decided we'll consolidate it with Lisa at podcastprosperity.com to get a hold of us. And we're offering money coachable moments with meditation. It's a short meditation and coachable piece set to music, and it's really wonderful, very relaxing, and the theme is money, possibilities, and creating abundance. So that's what we'll offer if you get a hold of us.
Wow, how
okay, I'm good already.
Maybe they could text the word podcast over to Tammy, and maybe you could set that up, Tammy, to make a text out of it, and we can put it in the comments below. after.
Sure. We'll do that so people can get a hold of us. I'll put it in the comments right now. And also, I would like to select one of our audience members here. I think our friend Mads here has been very active today. She also just commented on the last topic. She said, absolutely agree. The human connection is important and needed, especially nowadays. Authenticity is invaluable. So she's been a very attentive guest. So Mads, we'd love to gift you a bag of Coffee with the Queens coffee.
Ooh.
I don't know if anyone has one nearby to hold up.
I have one.
Anyway, it's beautiful.
It's black and it has that on it.
Right there.
There we go.
I have it on the wrong side of my desk.
The coffee to go with this. It's beautiful coffee. And Costa Rica, it's called Empowerment Coffee. So we hope you enjoy it. So Mads, please PM me your specific address information. She says, oh, she's very excited. Woohoo. Thanks for listening,
So,
Mads.
actually, she could message me. I have her info. She messaged me. She would message me.
Okay. Oh, okay. You know Sahela. Okay, so get that over to Sahela. Thank you, Mads. Appreciate you. Great. So are there any last thoughts, anyone?
I think I'm going to go take the first step. I'm going to go take the first step.
To Coffee with the Queens.
Oh, wait. Okay. So Kathy, go first.
I just said I'm going to go take the first step. I'm just going to go step off, and we'll get back together, and we'll see if it works or not. So,
Yay!
It's kind of like this show. We're just stepping off, and I think everybody agrees. If you don't try, you won't succeed. So
we fail forward, don't we?
Exactly. We fail forward. We are all going to fail forward.
So right. You said we should do a podcast for Coffee with the Queens. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's what I said. Yes.
No, Sahelia actually said, I think might have said the same thing too. Maybe at the same time. Yeah. Reminder, everybody, that Sahelia is like limping along with, I don't know how you're doing the internet thing without power and your poor unlit Christmas tree, which still looks good. Even though there's no electricity. Just want to say.
No electricity on her birthday. She is.
That's right. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Sahela.
What a birthday to remember.
Indeed.
I want to be more enthused on this, but I can't because I don't know what's happening.
I have one last little thing too, if I could, is that I just love that Sohaili said that, memorable, because really, in a way, it is a legacy. You are, and I don't want to mean like a legacy or changing the world, but you're a time capsule. Like there's something that you're sharing for others.
Yeah.
To yourself. Remember, it says 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh, look at that. So it's a way of leaving a footprint and action and memory, always review. And I think that sometimes it's for our own coaching value, our own therapy, just say things and get them out and get our message and story out. That's what Tomás and I say all the time. You have that lesson, but that's, yeah.
And the show must go on. It still has to go on.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. People were enjoying our content today. Stephanie saying, awesome presentation. I think people learned a lot. Thank you so much for all that you've shared.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. And we're gonna let you get on with your day, and want to invite everybody that has been watching. If you're watching this afterwards, thank you for giving the time and watching this episode. And we want to please encourage you. We are going to grow this by your help. So please share, subscribe to the Digital Duchess channel on YouTube, and yes, just follow us any way that you can. Please keep your comments going, because that helps us to create a really good show for you as well. And so tune in. We will be here next week, and we will have an awesome show for you guys. But for right now, we're signing off and wrapping up. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go.
We did it.